good afternoon. And this is our fourth installment, our segment on podcasts on ancient Israel and modern day Israel. We've been talking about modern day Israel, and this should be our last installment, but we're still going to get into some pretty heavy stuff. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. One of the first questions I'm going to ask you is, does Israel, like Ukraine, have a right to defend themselves against aggressor nations?
Yes. And the reason they have the right to defend themselves is because the land of Israel is Jewish land. So anyone that attacks them without any reason, without any provocation, they have a right to defend themselves against aggressor nations, just like Ukraine. When Russia attacked Ukraine for no reason, they have a right to defend themselves. So if they want to, I don't know, I hate to admit it, but, if it means killing thousands of the enemy that are trying to destroy you, well, so be it.
I heard somebody say once, if Mexico did that to us, we'd invade them.
Yeah.
We just go in there and destroy them.
You have a right to defend yourself against those that are trying to destroy you. So see, this is why in 48 and 67 and 73, Israel was allowed to keep all the land that they captured during those wars because they did not start those wars.
That's right. They didn't initiate it.
Nope. But you know what? Here's the world. This is the screwed up thinking of the world, right? When Israel defends themselves, the world gets all upset. Oh, you're killing these poor Palestinians and all this other stuff. Well, let me see. In 48, they weren't called Palestinians. They were just Arabs. Suddenly in 67, now they're Palestinians. And who's attacking who? Who provoked all this? Not Israel. They did. So yeah, Israel has a right to defend themselves, just like they have a right to defend themselves against Hamas, who killed all those innocent Israelis on October 7, 2023. And Netanyahu said he was going to go into the strip and wipe out every last member of Hamas.
And that's going to be my next question about Hamas.
Okay.
You ready? Okay.
Yeah.
Why did Hamas attack Israel on October 7, 2023? And does this mean the end of Israel?
Well, if you look back at the history of Israel, I believe there's only one reason of Hamas attack. Because they're taking up that same mindless cause that the Arabs took up in 48. They picked up where Hitler left off. Hitler killed the Jews with bullets and gas, right? So these terrorists, and that's all they are. I don't care if it's 48 or 67 or 73, they're just terrorists, right? Are picking up where he left off, but instead of using gas and bullets, now they use bullets and bombs and whatever means they can, right? But their goal is the same, to wipe the Jews off the face of the map. Just like Hitler tried to do. Except he was killing all the European Jews. And that was the whole point of the final solution, was to wipe out every last Jew on the European continent. Well, Hitler failed. So now you have these murdering terrorists that are taking up where he left off.
In the summer of 2024, there were many student uprisings on many colleges' campuses across the nation and in Canada. What was that all about?
Well, the Students for Justice of Palestine, or the SJP, right, were protesting because this is how brainwashed these people are. They're blaming Israel for starting the war in the Strip. How stupid, man! Okay, see, stupid, mindless allegations, right? No fact, no proof to what they're saying. And it wasn't Israel that started the war in the Strip anyway in 2023. It was Hamas. So this is what they were protesting. That Israel, these villains, had started this war against these terrorists, you know. Sorry, wrong. Get your facts straight. So that's why they were, you know, that's why they were yelling out to from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, you know. Well, you know what? Well, they're right in one way. Palestine will be free eventually, but not under your control. You know, when Christ comes back, that's when the Middle East, that's when the whole Middle East region will finally be free of all of this nonsense. No more wars, no more fighting, no more bloodshed, but man is not going to implement it.
Right. Well, you briefly talked about Hitler, but here's another question. Did Hitler hate the Jews?
He certainly did. So, after the First World War ended on November 11, 1918, Hitler got wind that Germany had lost the war. He was recuperating in a field medical tent. I know there's another name for it, but anyway, he was recuperating from a gas attack. He had temporarily experienced blindness because of this gas attack, and that's when he heard that Germany had lost the war. And from that point on, Hitler was bound and determined that he was going to do something against the Jewish and Bolshevik communities because he bought into that myth, that stab in the back myth that so many Germans bought into, that the reason Germany lost the war was because the Jews and the Bolsheviks had conspired together, and this is why Germany lost the war. You didn't lose the war because of them. You lost the war because you simply, at the end, you just petered out. You know, the Germans came on strong. For, oh my goodness, they were basically unbeatable. But they just burnt out at the end. And that's why they lost the war, because they had just burnt out. And here we, the Allies, we were bringing in all these fresh troops from America, and Germany could replenish all those troops that they were losing.
We had tanks.
And we had tanks, and they didn't.
Right.
So that's why they lost, because they couldn't replenish their troops like we could, and they just simply burn out.
World War II, same thing happened.
Same thing happened. Yep.
They run out of men and equipment.
Yeah, they just ran out of steam.
Yeah. Well, a couple more questions. What happened to the Jews after the Roman invasion of 70 AD?
Well, okay, so I'd say about 1 million people were killed
Mhm.
inside the city of Jerusalem. This is just a rough estimate. Another 1 million were taken captive and went back to Rome as
Mhm.
slaves.
Mhm.
And another 1 million were scattered in the diaspora. So if you look at a map, you'll see that Europe is right above Israel. And this is why the majority of your Jews come from Israel, come from Europe,
Mhm.
because they scattered
Mhm.
to Europe. This is why when the Second World War started, you had these communities in Eastern Europe, these shuttles that had been there for 900 plus years, because these are the Jews that came out of the diaspora. Now, America was not known at the time when the Romans invaded, so they went to the closest place possible, and the closest place was Europe.
Now, didn't the Romans rename Jerusalem?
Yeah, they named it, Hayden did. He was like a general,
Mhm.
some emperor general. He named it Palestina.
Right.
And thinking that if he renamed Jerusalem Palestina, which is where we get Palestine from, right, that it would prevent the Jews from coming back. How stupid is that?
Well, he didn't read the Old Testament, did he?
Yeah, he didn't read it. But, you know, a Roman in his heathen thinking
Right,
mind, you know. But, so yeah, that's where we get the word Palestine
Mhm.
from, is
Right.
from Palestina.
Right, right.
And, but obviously his curse didn't work, because there's 8 million Jews living in Israel today.
Almost 10 million, actually.
Yep.
10 million that speak the language. That's what I read.
Well, you can thank Eleazar ben Yehuda for
Mhm.
that.
Right.
He's the one that brought back Hebrew
Mm-hmm.
into the country at the turn of the century, at the
Mhm.
turn of the,
Right.
at the beginning of the 20th
Was
century.
Herzog, another guy Herzog, also involved in that?
No, he was the one that first proposed the Jewish state.
Okay, that was later.
At the first Zionist
Mm-hmm.
convention that was held in Basel, Switzerland in 1897.
Well, you know, that's the only time a dead language was ever brought back.
Yep,
Never happened before.
first time a dead nation was ever brought back.
That's right.
When David Ben Gurion declared Israeli independence. Israel hadn't been a nation for almost 2,000 years.
And that scripture says, can a nation be born in one day?
Yeah,
It happened.
Isaiah 6:6.
Right.
Isaiah 6:6-8
Yeah.
says that. Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah, it is.
Well, here's another one that they were deported. What happened to the Jews after the Babylonian invasion of 586 BC?
Well, those that weren't killed by the sword or famine or pestilence, most of them were taken back to Babylon
Mhm.
as slaves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Daniel, Mordecai, and Esther. Who else? Ezekiel. Ezekiel. He was a prophet of God, but he did all his prophesying right there in Babylon.
Mm-hmm.
So they went into Babylonian captivity,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the Jews remained for 70 years. And then when you read the book of Ezra, 50,000 of them came back after that 70-year
Mm-hmm.
captivity. Not all the Jews came back, because by this time a lot of them had been acclimated to Babylonian
Culture.
society and
Yeah.
culture. But 50,000 of them came back, and you could read about their exploits in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah.
Yeah.
Oh,
What king was it that released him? Was it Cyrus? Or?
Cyrus
Right,
got the ball rolling.
right.
Also, too, when the Jews came back after their 70-year Babylonian captivity, they never worshipped another idol again.
That's amazing.
But they never had another king either.
Right.
No Jewish king ever sat on the throne after that.
And I believe that's the only nation that turned away from idols and never went back. The only culture that's done that.
I think so. Yep. But they got involved in other things that God didn't want them to get involved in. They started intermingling with
Right.
the other nations around them and taking their daughters to their sons, and their sons they were giving to their daughters. And that caused a big problem in both the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. But yeah, no Jewish king has ever sat on the throne since Zedekiah. And some people think, well, Herod was Jewish. Herod wasn't Jewish. He was an Idumean man. He wasn't Jewish. See, again, I don't know where people get their ideas from. Listening to the wrong thing. Again, I blame a lot of these Bible colleges, so-called Bible colleges, that will read all this nonsense like those missing books. I'm sorry, folks, but those missing books, those so-called missing biblical books, were written by man. They were not inspired by God, and all of them, not just some of them, but all of them have misleading information. Okay, so you can't really trust what's in any of those so-called missing books. And yet, when I went to Bible college, you had students that were putting their trust in these missing books of the Bible. It's like, ignorant people. They don't read their Bible, but they'll latch on to these other things.
Kind of like what the Israelites are doing.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yep. Well, it's just like the Judaizers, right? Instead of receiving Jesus as their Savior and knowing for sure that you're gonna make it into heaven when you get to the end of your life, they're latching onto their good works. And what does Paul say about that? That no one is justified by keeping the works of the law. So your good works don't amount to anything. Now, I'm not just saying that to the Judaizers. I'm saying that to anybody. If you think your good works are going to get you into heaven, you're sadly mistaken. Jesus said, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes unto the Father except through me. He never said anything about good works. As a matter of fact, Jesus said, I've come to fulfill the law. So because he fulfilled the requirements of the law, you no longer have to keep the requirements of the law
And
to be saved.
Apostle Paul, he was an expert in the law.
Exactly.
He said, for it is by grace you have been saved.
And not of yourself.
Right. Through faith and not of yourselves. It's
Yep.
a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
anyone could boast about keeping the law, it was Paul.
Exactly.
Or Saul.
Exactly.
Saul
This
of
is,
Tarsus.
this is why Paul was so hated.
Right.
Even by his own people.
Yeah.
Because he was preaching and teaching a doctrine that was in opposition to Judaism.
And he was a Pharisee of Pharisees.
Yep.
Taking him out of the alley.
So this is why today in Israel, the Judaizers hate the Messianics because they preach and teach a message that's in opposition to Judaism, which says basically you can save yourself. You don't need anybody else.
They're also angry because they're spreading.
Yep.
A lot of secular Jews are coming to the Lord,
No.
especially since COVID.
So does that mean God is finally waking up these people?
I would hope so. Because when we were there, we went to their IHOP and we spent some time with these people, and they were telling us this ministry exists and this one. I remember when this one was just one little video. Now it's worldwide, one for Israel,
Oh
and they
yeah.
got a Bible college. I remember when they had just a few videos online, and it exploded in the last 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
When they were locked down, because Israel, they were locked down hard during COVID. They had hard lockdowns. People had nothing to do but sit there and watch videos.
Yeah.
And they were watching these videos that these guys all had, put together. They had doctors, they had soldiers, they had psychiatrists that came to the Lord and gave these testimonies. All walks of life. And they all had something really supernatural happen to them.
Well, you know what? Yeah, God is waking up his people. Well, we know at the end of the 7-year tribulation that that's when the nation of Israel is going to repent and turn back to the Lord, and that's when he's going to come back and destroy all their enemies.
And you forgot to say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
Yep, yep.
But during the triumphal entry, they said, blessed is the king who comes in the name of the Lord. And they proclaim peace in heaven and glory in the highest. But then they turn around and crucify him.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but it just wasn't, you can't blame the Jews for that, because Jesus came and died for everybody.
Right.
So
That was his mission.
that was his mission,
Right.
was to die and shed his blood for everybody.
But he did weep over Jerusalem.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
did in the Mount of Olives.
Yep, yep.
He knew it was going to happen.
Because he knew,
70 AD.
yeah. But people were hard-hearted, just as hard-hearted. They were just as hard-hearted then as they were back in the Old Testament.
Right.
Here they had waited how many thousands of years for their Messiah to show up, and he shows up and they don't believe it. The religious leaders don't believe it.
They're looking for a Davidic king.
Yeah.
Another King David.
Yep. Someone overthrow those mean, nasty Romans.
And they were mean and they were nasty.
Oh yeah, they were.
They didn't play.
Nope.
They knew how to kill people and torture people.
Yeah.
They came up with crucifixion.
Yeah.
They invented it.
Yeah, they invented crucifixion. One of the most horrible ways to die.
Right. Well, that's the last question on our podcast. Do you have any closing statement you'd like to make before we wrap it up?
Well, I just want to say,
You over all this stuff?
I just want to say that, try as the enemy might, Israel is here to stay. There no one force. I don't care if it's a mosque or Qatar or even the 20 Arab nations that surround Israel. No one force is gonna destroy Israel. They've already tried this, and it got them nowhere. Israel's enemies are always made to look like fools. Because they are. They're fools if they think they can come against God's people. So, Israel's here to stay. I don't care what people say. If you care to read the Old Testament, unfortunately many people don't, then you'll see that God has a great plan outlined for Israel.
Yeah, the covenant. There's a covenant. The covenant people.
Yep. Yeah.
He didn't make a covenant with the United States.
No.
He made it with Israelites, with
Yep.
Israel.
He made it with no other nation except them.
Right.
So, yeah, God has a wonderful future plan mapped out for these people. And this is why the enemy hates Israel. Because he knows that God has a future for these people. You know, the enemy tried to prevent Jesus from being born. Now he's trying to prevent Jesus from coming back by having all these people, including, sadly to say, people in the church, turning against Israel to try to prevent Jesus from coming back. But it's not going to happen. You failed once, you're going to fail again. Because that's obvious when you read the book of Revelation, right?
Well, but he can't come through the Golden Gate. It's sealed. You think that's going to stop him? He's going to walk through the Golden Gate. He's going to blow that thing wide open.
He's just going to come right through it.
Right. And they even put a cemetery in front of it.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
going to blow right through that.
That was the Arabs.
Yeah. But at least they believed the prophecy. They believed it enough to do that.
Yeah, but it's just like Hadrian.
Right.
It's not going to amount to anything.
Right.
But, yeah, so people just need to wake up and they need to realize that they need to get on the right side of history.
Right.
Either you're going to be a blessing to Israel or you're not.
Right.
Oh, and you know what? Even a lot of these Bible colleges now are turning against Israel. That goes to show me how ignorant their administration is.
Right.
You claim you read the Bible, study the Bible. You're in charge of this college that's supposed to be teaching people how to go out and teach and preach the word, and yet you're anti-Semitic yourself. So, that's this country though, man. It's slowly becoming anti-Semitic. You know, the United States used to be a haven for Jews, but I can't say that's the truth anymore.
Especially in these campuses.
Yep. Look at what happened last year on these college campuses. And guess who was responsible for a lot of that?
Iran?
No, the administration.
Oh, yeah, them too, yeah.
The administration on the
They let it happen.
campuses, yeah, they just didn't care.
Well, what I've been told was it cost them. A lot of their big donors are Jewish. And financially it cost them.
Well, you know what? I will bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee. You let these mindless animals come on your campus and do what they did? No, I'm sorry, I'm good for that. You know, if it had been a peaceful protest, okay, that's one thing, but this was far from peaceful.
Right. Started attacking the Jews.
Exactly, and blaming Israel for starting the war with
Tell them they're
Hamas.
bringing back the Holocaust and all this stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the administrations on a lot of these campuses just let these mindless animals get away with that.
And I guess a lot of students had to leave, didn't they?
Yep.
Go to Ivy League schools.
Yeah.
And a lot of money to go there.
Yep. I don't blame them. Hey,
Columbia, yeah, and New York. One of them.
it's just, I don't know, it's just ridiculous. But that's how far this country has backslid, you know? That tells me right then and there that the Bible sits on our shelves and collects dust more than we read it. Because if we really read it, we would understand that what we're doing here is wrong. Because it says it right there in Genesis 12:3. I will bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee. But we have an administration that's in Washington. They think they know more than God. And then you have these other administrations, especially these college campuses, where the administration thinks they know more than God, you're going to pay for it.
Right. I heard it said they just shut them down and turn them into homeless shelters. The college campuses that are doing it, turn them into housing.
They should.
This is what they're paying all this money for?
Yeah.
These parents are paying all this money?
Well,
Ivy League school?
the problem is I thought, when one went to college or university, you're going there to learn.
Right.
You're not going there to hate other groups of people. But, we got it all twisted around. Now our college and university campuses are hotbeds of hatred.
Right. And these kids are coming home and their parents are like, what happened to my kid?
Yeah.
I spent all this money, sent them there to learn to be an engineer, and they come back a hater.
Yeah.
And an expert in propaganda.
Yep.
And spewing all this hate.
Yep. Well, these colleges and university campuses only have themselves to blame because they let these students for Justice of Palestine come on their college campuses for years, spewing out their hatred and their anti-Semitic rhetoric. And now you see the end result, how it boiled over.
Well,
again, it's our fault.
right.
They didn't want to control what was going on. They just allowed it to happen. They didn't care who was there spewing out their hatred, and they just let these mindless animals get away with this.
They might as well just let the brown shirts in there, like in 33, 34 in there. Hitler, when he first started.
Oh, yeah.
The SA and all them. It's very similar.
Yep.
It turned into, the SS and then the Gestapo and then all that. And the Nazi, but they were originally the SA, the brown shirts. They used to just go around and just beat up people and
Exactly.
tear up their stores and brutalize them.
Yeah.
Right.
Mindless automatons.
Right.
That's what they are, man. There's mindless automatons. All these terrorists, just mindless automatons. They can't think. They don't know how to act right. My 3 cats act better. Have more common sense.
Well,
These people have no common sense.
there are some people that are putting their life in danger. Palestinians that are speaking out and said they want Hamas gone, but they're afraid because this is all they know. For years and years and years. If they say something, they're dead and their whole family's dead. And some of them are speaking out that we want them out of here. They're tired of it. Their sons are going and dying, or they're going and committing suicide, blowing themselves up.
Yeah. For no reason whatsoever.
And now the strip is just nothing but
Rubble. Yeah, rubble. It's basically been all destroyed.
Yeah.
Oh, well. You can thank Hamas for that.
Well, the Arabs said that they're going to take it over and do something with it.
No, they're not.
We'll see. See if they. Yeah.
Israel's the one that should just take it back.
Right.
Don't give it to the Arabs. You're just going to have more problems.
Right.
This is why the problem started in the first place. When they handed the strip over to these fake Palestinians, hoping that they would set up their fake Palestinian state.
Right.
But it's never ever been about setting up a fake Palestinian state.
Right.
It's always been about just trying to eliminate Israel.
People didn't get this when they asked these Arab countries that's all in that area to take in some of the Palestinian refugees. How many did they take in?
None that I know of.
None. Not they didn't want any.
Well, guess.
Now think about that. They didn't want them. because they don't want that in their country. But yet Israel has to support them. They gave them all this stuff and money so they could build their hospitals and their schools
Yeah.
and the drink water systems, and they used them to build tunnels and rockets.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? The Arab nations are the ones that started the refugee problem anyway. When during the 48 war for independence, all these people fled from their homes in these Arab countries.
Right.
And these Arab leaders said, well, when we get done blowing Israel into the ocean and we're walking through pools of Jewish blood, you know, then you can come back and resume your life. Well, they lost, and they said, well, we don't want you now.
Right, right.
So they've turned this whole refugee problem into an Israeli problem when it's them that's caused the whole problem.
And all this time, look what happened to Syria. And just Syria just went exploded.
Oh, yeah.
And then Israel's trying to stay out of that, you know?
Yeah, and Assad finally got kicked off of his
Right.
throne. Good for nothing murderer.
Right. You might have somebody that's willing to work with these other nations.
Oh, I hope
We'll
so.
see.
Yeah. Because a lot of these Arab leaders, they don't want to work with anybody. They just want to pursue their mindless agenda, you know?
Right.
Destroy. Oh, no. Kill, rob, and destroy. That's all they want to do.
Yeah.
Well, you claim you serve God, but you don't act like it. You do the devil's work for him.
Well, we took a bunch of Syrians came here as refugees. From
Here?
Syria. Yeah, in the U.S. Came here from the Syrian war. You know, so they actually, the new leader wants them to come back. He's saying, hey, come back, you know, and we're going to fix this place.
Yeah, famous last words.
Right.
You know, so much of Assyria has been destroyed.
Yeah, it was such a beautiful place, too.
It'll take billions and billions of dollars to fix that place up.
Right. And ISIS destroyed a lot of biblical sites.
Yep. But they don't care, you know?
Right.
Again, they just do the devil's work for them. Kill, rob, and destroy.
Yeah.
Just like Hamas, kill, rob, and destroy.
We were there when ISIS, after they were winning everything, they threatened Israel. They were going to invade Israel and go all the way and free the Palestinians. And everybody's running scared. We were there when all these troops were moving north. Okay, everybody was going north. We happened to be there. All these reservists being called up. So they put them on the border. There were UN troops there. Okay, and Israel said, you guys need to move out the way. They said, we're not moving. You move or we're going over you, because we're not going to wait till ISIS gets to our border. Well, ISIS did a very smart thing. You know what they did? They turned around and went home. Yep.
That's good.
I don't know what to call it, like 600,000, and they had all this right there, all that armor and everything ready to go to fight ISIS in their Toyota trucks.
Wow.
They beat Iraq.
Yep.
Everybody.
Well, they beat every nation around them.
Yes.
Lebanon, Iraq.
Right.
You know, because God is with them. He's not with those other nations.
Right.
You know?
They messed with Jordan. And Jordan's own king was a pilot. He was in a raid that attacked ISIS. So he started working supposedly with Israel's special forces were in there, but quietly in Jordan. Because they killed some pilots. Jordanian pilots, ISIS did. And the king got in his plane and his squadron and attacked ISIS.
Wow.
That was pretty cool, you know. But we covered a lot of material on ancient Israel and modern Israel. It'd be good if you could do a follow-up someday to all this. And you're going to get a lot of questions from people, and you might have to clarify. So if you want to do this, I'd be happy to be part of that.
Yeah. If I get a lot of questions, I'll do a follow-up.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing this, and hopefully people will be educated with the truth.
Yeah, the truth.
will set you free.
Exactly.